Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I'm going to be talking about all the books that I gave 5 stars in 2022. Let's just jump into it because there was quite a few. A lot that I had forgotten about just because it was at the beginning of the year. But I'm excited and I stand by the ratings of all these books. I absolutely loved them. I think they are must-reads and they were absolutely beautiful and stunning. Getting it out of the way because I don't want to say that about every single book that I tell you guys about. So let's just jump right into it. So for the month of January, I gave Tools of Engagement by Tessa Bailey 5 stars. This book holds such a special place in my heart. This was the beginning of my Tessa Bailey era. This was the beginning of me falling in love with Tessa Bailey. I read her Fix Her Up series, or what's it called? Her Hot and Hammered series. I read Fix Her Up and it was 4 stars for me. I gave Lover or Loser 4.5 stars, but then when I read Tools of Engagement, bitch, I ate that book up. I loved that book. I made a TikTok about it and it's like my most viewed TikTok ever. I'm pretty sure since I posted that. The audio has been taken down for it because TikTok sucks, but it was just so crazy for me to see how many people loved that TikTok and just loved that book as well. And it's been me and Tessa Bailey ever since. I love that book so much. But that month I also read A Not So Me Cute by Megan Quinn. I think this was my first book by Megan Quinn. I ended up giving it 5 stars. I just remember loving this book while I was reading it and I was laughing out loud. I was swooning. It was just so good. So those 2 books were for January. Then for February, I had After the Fall by Gianna Darling. That was the only 5-star read that I gave for February because, I don't know, it just was the only one. But this book surprised me because the plot twist in this book had me crying literally in my bed at 2 a.m. I was bawling my eyes out and I should have seen it coming, but I didn't see it coming and it tore my heart up. And you guys know I love Gianna Darling. I literally give all her books 5 stars. I cannot not give them 5 stars. And I just remember, it's just a vivid memory. And I remember after I finished it, I was just like, I can't believe this shit. She really made me cry at 2 a.m. And I gave it 5 stars and it was the only 5-star for February. Honestly, I'm gonna stop saying the months because when I wrote it down, I didn't put the months, but I was remembering the months. But now there's the following months, I gave multiple 5 stars to multiple books, so I'm not gonna be correct on what month it's from. So let's just keep going. Next one I gave 5 stars was another Gianna Darling book and it is Inked in Lies. When I tell y'all, when I read this book, I was like so in my feels. Like I was in my feels because I just felt this connection. I can't even remember her name. How deep of a connection was it if I can't remember her name? No, but I'm really bad at names, but I remember Nova because I want to say her Leah. It starts with a L. Bruh, I have the book here somewhere. Hold on. Lila. Oh my gosh, I suck. I just felt this connection with Lila and I felt her pain and her struggle and her need to prove herself and the whole unrequited love. It was the first time that I had read a book that had that in it. The angst, it just tore me up inside because they were just meant to be together. They are absolutely soulmates and it was just crazy learning about Nova's past and why he was doing the things that he was doing. The smut was amazing and just Gianna Darling's writing, like I could not have given this book 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. And then I read Famine by Laura Thalassa. Listen, the reason why I picked up Famine by Laura Thalassa is because I wanted to finish the Horsemen series. And I remember the first book and the second book, I gave them 4 stars. I didn't want to reread them because I don't know why I didn't love them. Maybe it was just the headspace that I'd been in, but I had been craving a fantasy at this point. So I went back to that series and when I read Famine, just her writing, the depth, the way that it's like they're fated together. They are made for each other. And I just live for that. I eat that shit up. Like I can't help it. It is just absolutely beautiful and it's also devastating because these horsemen are here to destroy the world and then the heroines are trying to show them the good in our world. You know what I mean? And I gave it 5 stars because I absolutely loved it. I loved it so much. It was so good. I love that series so hard. I literally have special editions of it because I needed to have them, and I don't regret it one bit. Then I went back to more Gianna Darling. I gave Dead Man Walking 5 stars. This one, it just spoke to the darkness in me. You know what I mean? Priest was always someone in the MC that I wanted his love story, because I knew that he was kind of like a psychopath, and he was the enforcer. He was the killer of the MC. And you know, I love that shit. I eat that shit up. I love what he was and how he held himself and the presence and the way that he is. Like, overall, he is just... He's like a villain that you just love, you know? And B was just the complete opposite of him. And honestly, I didn't see their relationship coming. I didn't know that they were going to be paired together. But I think that the way that Gianna Darling did it, it was just beautifully done. And B is Priest's soulmate. They were just so hot together. They were so hot together. I had to give it 5 stars. Then I read Death by Laura Thalassa. Here we go, switching off. Death, oh my gosh. That was the last book of the 4 Horsemen, and this one broke me. Low key, it broke me, because this is heavy enemies to lovers. They are killing each other. Like, literally, they are causing each other pain because she is fighting so hard to end the apocalypse, and he is death, and he has a mission, and he doesn't waver from this mission, so much so that he causes like so much pain, but he's also like falling in love, and he's my winged baby. He has wings, and you know, I eat it up when the heroes have wings. It stems from me being a Batgirl from Agatar. I can't help it. It is so good. It was so good. It was devastating, but it was beautiful to the end. It was heartbreaking as well, and it made me feel so much, and I just couldn't not give it 5 stars. It was so good. Then I read The Kiss Quotient, and this one always brings a smile to my face, because this was, I think, my first Helen Huang book, and wow, she really did that. This book had me swooning, y'all. This book had me in a chokehold. I made a whole video about it, which I will link if you guys want to watch it, where I give you guys my review and also go through some of my annotations. But it was just this love story, and it was sweet, and it was so good. It was the little things about that book. It was the moments, the trust that needs to be built. It was Michael learning to love someone. He was a cinnamon roll, but it was also hot. And I think that this is probably the hottest one. It's not so hot like filthy, but it's like, it has steam, and I think it's the steamiest one out of all 3. I haven't read the 3rd one though, but I heard it's not that steamy. But it was so good. I gave it 5 stars. I loved it. It was just a sweet romance, and I can't wait to reread it so I can feel that way again, the way that I felt when I was reading it. Then I read My Killer Vacation by Tessa Bailey. It's just something about Tessa Bailey writing. It's the pining. It's the smutty scenes. It's the pining. I couldn't not. The way that this book, like Jen from the Book Refuge likes to say, gave me lady blue balls, because the way that Tessa Bailey does the tension in her books, it's crazy. But then she stops it, and there was multiple times in this one where it was like cut off, and I was like, no, they were literally about to get together. Like, the tensions were high, the chemistry was explosive, the passion was there, and then you wouldn't get it. But then when you do finally get it, it's just so hot, and everything that you wanted. And the love story is so sweet, because he's such a grump and she's such a sunshine, and they're also trying to find out this plot, and there's like the protectiveness, the possessiveness, and it was so good. I loved it. I loved My Killer Vacation. Then I read Blindside by Candy Steiner, and I believe that this was my first Candy Steiner book, and I loved it. I think this took the internet by a storm, especially the way that Candy Steiner put the whole bookish reading, annotating tabs, and like turned it into like them recreating these scenes, and him learning the best things that she liked and why, putting that in the scene, and putting the pining, putting the fake dating, the is this real, is this not, I can't live without her. It was perfection. It was so good. I still think about that book I still think about all these books, but I still think about that book, and it will always hold a special place in my heart. The cover, Clay on the cover, oh my god, he is so hot. I loved it. Then I read Enthralled by Gianna Darling, and listen here, this book caused me a little bit of trauma. I read this is the first book in the Enslaved duet, and I read this in June, I remember, and I didn't read the second book until I think November. I just felt like I needed a minute, because the way that I didn't know that Gianna Darling had gone with this book, because see, I had read all her books kind of not in order. At least the three sister books, I didn't read them in order. And when I got to this book, I had already read captive romances, but the way that this one was, it was like more master slave, and it was beautifully written. It's Gianna Darling, and you fall so hard for the hero, and the stuff that the hero is in, like this secret society, I was not expecting it. It was not in the realm of my imagination brain. Like, I didn't know the plot twist that was gonna happen, and the things that followed that and the events that had happened, I just was so shook, but I was so in love with their relationship, and it was amazing. It was 5 stars. I loved it so much, but I needed time to process, and then I took too much time to process, and then when I picked up the second book, I just kind of fell right back in love with them. And that one is another 5 star that I gave, which was the second book in the Enslaved duet, which is called Enamored. I did give that one 5 stars as well. Since we're talking about the Enslaved duet, I figured I'd just put it here, but I read that later on. It was just a beautiful ending to the duet, and it was everything that I wanted and more. The way that Alexander takes care of Cosima and the things that he does for her, oh my god, it is just so good. They are literal soulmates. I love them so much. Okay, moving on. Then I read Flawless by Elsie Silver, and I did have a reading vlog for this. I'm not gonna go too much into it because I feel like this video is gonna be so long. Flawless was my first small town cowboy romance, and it was amazing. It literally was amazing. I turned a new leaf. I was like, oh, I love this. Oh, I ate this up. There was so many scenes in here. Elsie Silver's writing, the way that I learned that I love forced proximity was from this book. I loved the banter, the funny moments, the jealous moments, the cowboy hat scene, the chap scene. Those scenes still live in my head rent free. When I recommend a book to somebody, it's either Elsie Silver or Candy Steiner, like some of those like more contemporary ones. Elsie Silver is one of my top authors of 2022, and I just can't wait to get through her backlist, and I'm so excited to read more of her books in 2023. Flawless was just flawless. It was just absolutely flawless. I loved it so much. Then I read a novella called Run Run Rabbit by C.M. Nascosta, and this one just honestly took me by surprise because I had never read anything like it. It pissed me off because the way that the hero is such an alpha asshole. Like, he's such an asshole, but he's also cocky and so sure of himself that you're just kind of like, ugh, like, I still want you, you know? But this was so different. But this is, I think, one of the first novellas that I've ever read that I gave 5 stars. And I think it's just because I was mad, but it also had me, like, squealing. Like, I was eating this up. And I also loved the heroine because I thought she was just so strong and she gave as good as she got. This relationship was very different from every other relationship that is in romance books that I've ever read. It was just so good. Like, they were perfect for each other. They were like soulmates because what she wanted aligned with what he wanted. They were explosive, the chemistry, the passion, and it is a werewolf romance. It's Alpha Omega. I don't think she's an Omega, but he's an Alpha for sure. Anyways, I will be rereading this. When? I don't know, but it was really good. I gave it 5 stars. Now, I read Carnal Urges. This is the second book in the Queens and Monsters series, and I gave this one 5 stars. It was so good. J.C. Geisinger, all her books, I love them so much. It's just the banter. It really is. It's the conversation with the characters. It's the forced proximity. It is the, yeah, literally, the banter. I laugh every time I read J.C. Geisinger. I eat it up. I binge her books. I just love them. I love them. This was a Captive, and I loved Sloane. She was so boss. She was just a bad bitch, and she literally had every single man in this book wrapped around her finger. I love her, and I love Declan, and they were perfect for each other, and the smut is always really good. 5 stars for that one. I have to stop saying that it's 5 stars because you guys know it's 5 stars because it's literally every book in this video is 5 stars, but it was just so good. Then I read Archer's Voice, and this one took me by surprise. I just had never met someone like Archer. It was like, he is just the sweetest man, and he deserved everything that he got. He deserved his happily ever after. The plot, it was so heartbreaking, but it was also just so uplifting that he was able to move forward and be with B. Is it B? I think B. Something like that. And it was just so different than what anything else that I had read, and I loved it. And this book made me tear up like towards the end, but I thought it was very, very, very well done, and I had to give it 5 stars. There couldn't be anything else because it is just so different in what it is. And I loved Mia Sheridan's writing, and I loved Archer's and B's relationship together. It was so cute. It was sweet. It was a sweet romance. It's kind of like the Kiss Quotient. It kind of falls in that category for me, and I loved it so much. Then I read Wolf Gone Wild. Oof, girl. Okay, this is a paranormal romance that took me by surprise. I had heard so much about this series, and I picked up the first book because it was in October. I remember I wanted something spooky, something paranormal, something witchy, and this book gave everything that I needed to give. The way that this book had me giggling, kicking my feet like I was a little girl, like I was just eating this book up. The tension, the forced proximity, the way that I was laughing at Alpha, Mateo's wolf, and I was trying to also figure out who the main villain was, and just my whole journey through this book. I loved it. The tension, the dancing, the banter, the just overall chemistry and passion that you just feel through the pages. It was so good. It was just so good. I loved it. I loved it so much. It was a great intro to the series, and I can't wait to finish the whole series. Moving on to one of my favorite top reads of the year, I read Funny Feelings. This one, it was amazing. It was amazing. I loved it so much. I need to stop saying that. I feel like I'm so repetitive. This was my first ever book by Tara DeWitt, and she has quickly become one of my favorite authors. This story was just so different because the heroine is a comedian, and then we had the single dad. And you know, I'm finding out that I like the single dad trope. I can't help it. You know, when it is done right, when the kids are done right and these like single parent tropes, I fall for it so hard. And it was the pining for me in this one. It was the forced proximity for me in this one. It was the tension build up, the chemistry build up, the pining, bro. And then the fact that the sex scene in this one, I'm pretty sure there was like multiple of them, but the way that Tara DeWitt writes the sex scenes, it was something that I hadn't quite read before, and it was just done so beautifully. Like, it wasn't anything like dirty and filthy, but it was very passionate. You could feel it through the pages, the way that they were coming together, and it was beautiful. I loved it. I loved it so much. That book was perfection, and I can't wait to finish the last book on my Tara DeWitt backlist. I'm ready for it. I'm kind of sad because it's the last book. She only has 3 books in her backlist. She needs to write some more. But I loved it so much. I loved it so much. Now, then I read Heartless by Elsie Silver. This is also another one of my top reads of 2022. I remember I read this the day it came out, and I binged it. I read it same day, and I can't wait to reread it in 2023. I loved that book so much. It was the single dad trope, which I loved, and it was the nanny trope as well, but I loved Willa. I loved her energy, her personality, and I loved Cade because he was so grumpy, but he was grumpy for a reason, and the reason that he was grumpy broke my heart because that man deserves the world, and he got it with Willa, but like, that man, he deserves it. And there's a scene in Heartless that lives rent free in my head, and it is the birthday kitchen scene. If you know, you know. That scene, oh my god, I ate that shit up. It was so good. I literally can't take it just thinking about it. I'm gonna keep talking about that book, but just know I love that book so much. It's high on my list. It's so high. Moving on, then I read The Co-op. I first had given this book a 4.5, but I was rounding it up to a 5-star, and it is a 5-star. This is another Tara DeWitt book. This one, it wasn't as smutty as her other one. The thing about this one is that I had thought it was a 4.5 because sometimes the emotion that this book made me feel, it hit real close to home. You know what I mean? And I loved the book. There is a scene in this book that lives rent free in my head. I just loved it so much. I just wish that I had more of the relationship beforehand, like a past to present, but it's still a 5-star for me. I loved Tara DeWitt's writing. It is so good. It was just so good. I loved the aspect where they had to rebuild the relationship while also rebuilding this home that had so many memories for both of them. I thought it was beautifully done, and I loved the pining and the forced proximity and the way that Deacon he was head over heels for Lauren. I love to see it. What can I say? Then I read Quarterback Sneak. This is a 5-star for me. I absolutely loved it. I loved Holden. I loved Julep. I loved their story. I thought it was very well done, and the smut in this book was very well done. And I just love college sports romance, and I love the way that Candy Steiner does it. Then I read Give Me More by Sarah Kate. I gave this book 5 stars, and it is well deserved. This is like one of my most favorite polyamorous relationships. Is that what it's called? No, it's like a menage relationship. Is that what the fuck it's called? It's a 3-person relationship, okay? I loved how they came together. I loved the communication. I loved the spice. You know, Sarah Kate will bring it with the spice. I loved the internal struggles that each one of these characters had. I loved how they just came together. It was just meant to be. They are a 3-person relationship. They just fit. They each had a connection with each other. It was never like disconnected in a way. And I think the thing that made this book was the communication and the spice. Obviously, like the spice in these books, girl. It was heartbreaking, but it was beautiful at the same time. And I loved it so much. I can't wait to have that book physically in my hands. I really can't. Then I read The Cat and Mouse Duet by H.D. Carlton. These were my first books by H.D. Carlton, and I wish that I would have read H.D. Carlton in October, but I didn't, because her books are spooky. They give you that vibe. They give you that atmosphere that like just scary, but like you can't stop reading. And these books are thick. And when I tell you that I binge them, it's just Zayd. Daddy Zayd. Like, come on now. But you also love Adeline because her personality and the way that she's a strong ass heroine. She takes no shit, and she doesn't take it from Zayd either. But Zayd, he makes the duet. He really does. That's my stalker baby. Oh, I love him so much. He is just so fucking crazy. He's so crazy, but he's crazy for Adeline. And I loved the multiple plots in this book. It kept me entertained. Like I said, I binged both of them. I couldn't stop reading. These are dark books, but I understood it, and I knew why the things that were happening, and just the overall progression of Adeline and Zayd's relationship, and the side characters as well, which I can't wait for. It was everything that I wanted and more, but I didn't know that I needed. You know what I mean? I knew people were hyping it up, and I didn't understand, but now I do, and it is totally worth the hype. Loved it so much. It's honestly Zayd. It's Zayd for me. Then I read Does It Hurt by H.D. Carlton, and this one was a 5-star for me. Like all of H.D. Carlton that I've read has been 5 stars. Just the plot was different, but the ambiance was the same. The spookiness was the same. The kind of like, I don't want to say thriller, it was kind of just like so spooky. It gave you that vibe, but I loved the ocean vibes. I loved the lighthouse vibes. I loved Enzo. That man. I loved the way that they met. I loved the waterfall scene. I loved the way that they spoke to each other. I loved the way that the writing was written. It was done so beautifully. I think that's what it is. H.D. Carlton's writing, it just works for me. And I loved the relationship was definitely enemies to lovers, but they had that initial connection where they still weren't enemies to lovers yet. And then the way that Enzo can't help but hate her, but also love her, and the shit that he puts her through, but she takes takes it all and doesn't back down. Like, she's just a badass bitch. So like, it was so good. It was very well done. I loved it. I might be in the minority because I did read this for a book club and not a lot of people loved it, but I loved it. I loved it so much I gave it 5 stars. It's just the way that H.G. Carlton writes and how she makes me feel, and I thought it was very well done. And I think that they are soulmates, and they are dark. Like, they're so dark but they make you believe in their relationship, if that makes sense. Now for the last 3 in December that I read. First one, Brutal Vows. I had to give this one 5 stars. I was shook. I was wary when I was going into it, but I heard that it had reverse praise, and I eat that shit up, and that's exactly what I did with this book. I ate it up. This book had me in a chokehold. There was a scene in this book that lives rent-free in my head. I still think about this book. I loved the fact that the main heroine was a queen. She was a badass bitch. I loved the way that things turned out. I loved that Spider was such a pining hero, but he was also an alpha, but he was also kind of needy, and I just eat that shit up. Like, I eat that shit up. I literally love that shit. I loved it. I loved it so much. I love the mafia aspect, the smut, the banter, the forced proximity. It was everything. It was everything. Then I read Window Shopping, which I absolutely loved. Again, this is by Tessa Bailey. The pining, the smut, the tension, the back and forth. I absolutely love this one. It doesn't have a third act breakup. I thought it wrapped up very nice, and again, it's a novella by Tessa Bailey, and I loved it, and it was smutty, and it was just everything that I wanted for the holiday time. It was everything that I wanted and more. I thought the character backstories were amazing. I loved the way that they complemented each other, and Aiden was just a cinnamon roll. He was like a nice guy, but when he flipped that switch, when I tell you, when he flipped that switch, I would do anything for a man like Aiden. I would. He was chef's kiss. So good. I love them together. I loved the book. I loved Window Shopping by Tessa Bailey. Last book, The Christmas Blanket by Candy Steiner. This is actually a novella as well, and this one took me by surprise. I knew that it was a second chance romance, but I wasn't expecting to love it as much as I did. It literally made me tear up twice because of all the emotions. And you know what, I could blame this that I got my period soon after, so I was very like emotional and hormonal, but I loved it regardless. The smut was good. I mean, it wasn't like hella smut. I mean, it was a second chance romance, but the way that it was pining and the way that these two people were soulmates, but they were putting each other first despite that other person's unhappiness, and just thinking about it, I could cry. It is just the absolute definition of what being a partner in a marriage is, and of putting somebody else first before yourself, no matter how much it hurts that person. And if that isn't true love, then I don't know what is. And it was just all the memories, all the reminiscing, everything that you love about a second chance romance, it was there. Plus they had a dog, and I love that shit. It was so good. It was so good. It was so good. I teared up twice. I had to wipe my eyes because I was like, oh my god, this is so sad. But yeah, that was the last 5-star that I gave in 2022. I definitely recommend all of these books. If you have read any of these books, let me know down below in the comments when you rated them, or what was your favorite book of the year, or what were some 5 stars that you read. I would love to know, because I love to read people's 5 stars, because clearly you guys love them. Leave down below in the comments a star emoji if you don't want to comment any of the other stuff that I said. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.